Hello again. So now we're up to chapter 25, the turmoil between the wars. So between the First World War and the Second World War. So we're going to talk about what ended up happening in Europe that occurred that was going to eventually lead up to the Second World War. So we kind of started talking about the Russian Civil War that was starting. So let's kind of finish off on that. So as we mentioned, in October 1917, the Bolsheviks took power within Russia. They seized power. They signed a treaty with Germany in March 1918, and that was after the First World War. So they ended up signing that treaty, and then a civil war ended up breaking out in Russia after that point in time. And it was between the Bolsheviks, the red group, and the white group. So we have two different socialist movements that were starting at that point in time. We talked about the Mensheviks and their role as well. So the Bolsheviks were the ones that won that socialist movement, that total rebellion that was happening in Russia at that point in time. Russia also decided imperial expansion once again. So after the First World War, they ended up invading Poland and taking that portion of the land for them. It also became the empire of the Tsars. So Russia is getting larger, or the Soviet Union or USSR. So they basically divided the whole entire nation into sections. So you have divided Russia, you have the Transcaucasus region, you also have Ukraine, and of course Belarus. The Bolsheviks wanted to make a change for Russia at that point in time. So they're going to try to help the economy post-war. So they were still devastated by the population. A lot of men died. The population was strongly affected after the First World War. Economically, food prices and the like were very affected as well. People were starting to leave the urban cities. They were starting to flee into the countryside because they thought that they would have more opportunities being agrarian or farming rather than trying to, obtain opportunities within the urban cities. The Bolsheviks were responsible for also setting up the NEP, and also known as the New Economic Policy, where they allowed people to own private property, they could trade freely, and they can also farm their own land without any ramifications for the government. Okay. Another Bolshevik is going to come to the forefront after the time of Lenin. So we have this individual named Stalin. Stalin was a Bolshevik. He was from the region of Georgia, which of course was absorbed by Russia. And he played into politics after Lenin's death. Okay. In 1921, Stalin collectivized agriculture. And that's when he caused a little bit of, I guess you can say, issues for Russia, specifically in terms of attacking people that were unnecessary. So he attacked peasants, also known as kulaks. Between 1929 and 1933, about 5 million peasants were uprooted from their homes, and they were resettled either to the east or the north. So if you ever look at the regions on the map, topographically, I guess I can say. So if you look at that region, the north is basically not good for peasants to work on farmland, because it's frozen. Same thing in the east, it's very, very cold. It's not going to be very advantageous for them to be able to farm those lands. So topographically, it's not going to be good for them. And the fact that he uprooted them, basically just kicked them out, is another thing as well. Stalin also forced industrialization. Another thing that was responsible for the industrialization is he's going to use prison labor for his industrial working force. He also set up a labor camp system, also known as gulags. Most of the gulags that we know, of course, are going to be in the north, in Siberia. So we're talking about crazy conditions, trying to have these people that were uprooted, kicked out, and working in these gulags for him. He's also going to be responsible for the Great Terror between 1937 and 1938. And he basically attacked internal enemies. So anybody that stood against him as a ruler would basically be attacked and killed. This led to about 1 million people dead because of that. And it also led to about 1.5 million that were basically transported to those labor camps, those gulags. So craziness that was going on in Russia at that point in time. So let's talk about Italy and the aftermath of Italy. So fascism is going to slowly start to take its hold in Italy as well, similarly to what it's going to do in Germany. So World War I cost about 700,000 lives and cost $15 billion for Italy. So there was a lot of social conflict over lands. There was a lot of economic issues that were going on. There was inflation and also unemployment. So a lot of different issues that were going on for Italy. Italy wanted radical reforms. They wanted things going fast and quick so that way they can kind of just fix everything that they had, fix the economy, and get back to normal. So you're going to have this individual named Benito Mussolini. So Mussolini was a socialist and he was also a nationalist as well. He organized a group called the Fasci. The Fasci were responsible for occupying Rome in order to gain control of the government because he wanted to take over. He also wanted to end class conflict and replace it with national unity. He wanted Italy to finally be united as one so that way they can unite to the forefront under his endeavors. So let's go back to Germany. So Germany was also known as Weimar Germany. There was an uprising on November 9th of 1918, and it was led by the Social Democratic Party, also known as the SDP. They wanted reforms in Germany after the war. So they led for the November Revolution, okay? So you're going to have a different types of groups that are becoming to the forefront in Germany at this point in time. So you have the Freikorps. The Freikorps were right-wing people. They were anti-Marxist, anti-Semitic, and anti-liberal. So they were one of the first to kind of come to the forefront. The Weimar Republic in Germany is going to last from 1930 to 1933. So this is prior to, Hitler taking over that we'll mention. So Germany after the war owed $33 billion in reparations, basically for responsibility in the war. It basically led to economic collapse and led to a Great Depression in Germany. 2 million people were unemployed, lost status, lost income, a lot of economic issues for Germany. It's also going to bring about the National Socialist movement, which is basically Adolf Hitler's party. So Adolf Hitler is going to come to the forefront. In 1924, he was responsible for writing Mein Kampf. He basically argued that communists and Jews were responsible for weakening Germany. During the time of World War I, they led to that. And of course, after the war, they were ones that were responsible for it as well. The party tried to gain seats in the parliament, but of course, it's going to be a slow movement for them. In January 1933, the President Hindenburg, he basically invited Hitler to become chancellor. So that was kind of like the first moment when Hitler can actually, get involved in the politics of Germany. He convinced Hindenburg, as chancellor himself, to dissolve the Reichstag and order a new election so that the people could massively vote and vote who they wanted to vote. So that way they could fix the situation that Germany was in. So Hitler eventually became the leader of the Third Reich. So he became Nazi Germany. He became known as the Führer. Führer basically stands for father or leader. He didn't want to be called king. He didn't want to be called dictator, even though eventually he turned dictator, but he was the Führer. He relied on various groups to help him with this endeavor. So he had his SA, which were responsible for maintaining order. Those were his military. He also had the Gestapo, which was a secret police. So if there was any potential insurrections that may occur, the Gestapo was responsible for putting that into stopping it. Racism was also kind of coming to the forefront as well. He believed in social Darwinism. So like the strength of, the Aryan race was the most important to him. He also believed in racial anti-Semitism as well. So he's going to see that specifically as he takes over and eventually as World War II ends up starting too. So basically there was a Great Depression that was going to affect Europe as a whole. And eventually at this point in time, even after World War I, it's going to affect the United States too. So currencies are basically going to be devalued. There's going to be heavy unemployment. In terms of the United States, our president at that point in time was FDR, so Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was around during the time of the Great Depression. He instituted his New Deal. So if you ever take U.S. history, we talk about the New Deal. So the New Deal was basically to bring back infrastructure, bring back jobs, improve the economy. It also said about the Social Security system that we have today, so that way it could provide basically a cushion to people that are working in the workforce. And the chapter also talks about other things as well. So interwar propaganda, interwar culture, artists of the time as well. So as you're reading through, you can kind of see how the development of specifically Italy, specifically of Germany, how these different things are eventually going to be leading up to the Second World War that we're going to be talking about in the next chapter. All right, thank you.